Having an exceptional relationship with your spouse affects every single aspect of your life and is crucial for experiencing your dream life together. I'm Rob Murgatroyd.
And I'm Kim Murgatroyd. Listen in on our honest, filter-free conversations as we navigate life and business together without killing each other.
You'll learn by osmosis how to transform the friction you feel in your relationship into a purposeful foundation that will allow you to grow together.
Welcome to the Fri-Date podcast. All right, Robert, orange shirt Murgatroyd, how are you doing?
It's actually funny to have somebody do it on the other. Is that the first time we've ever done that?
I think I've ever done that. Yeah,
I think we should switch it. I think 1 week I should do it. 1 week you should do it.
It's not as fun. It's not as fun.
All right, go ahead. What are we talking about today?
All right, today we are going to talk about the 3 bumpers that we've put into place in our life to, have a great relationship and not grow apart. And here's what I'm going to say at the outset of this little discussion we're going to have. From day one, from the literal first day that Rob and I decided to become more than friends, we have been intentional about our relationship. We spent we actually committed to doing the first 2 years of dating, resisting the urge to get married, although I feel like we both could have done it the week after we started dating. True story. But we really committed to 2 years of personal development and, more than that, relationship development. So we did a million things within that 2 years, from books to video courses, I guess you'd call it, to in-person events. And our relationship from day one has been a priority in our life together. And so these bumpers, I think, organically were put in place. But now that they're there, we're in hindsight's 2020, we're going, oh, we actually have these bumpers in place that have kept us growing together. A lot of people that I know have been married, you get that 7-year itch and you start to grow apart. You had kids, you went on different paths. You went on, I have friends that have gone on different levels of growth, where one partner is kind of staying the same and the other partner is going down this personal development rabbit hole, and you grow apart. And so today we're going to talk about that.
So I think another example from the financial world is CURBS, C-U-R-B-S. So, for those of you that are familiar with it, forgive my horrible description of what that is. But basically the stock market throughout history has had times where it's crashed and people were jumping off the buildings, killing themselves because it lost, 30% in an afternoon. And then there were times where it went the other way, where people were becoming bazillionaires in an hour. And they decided that they don't want the pendulum to swing in any direction too high or too low. So what they did was they put curbs in. If it goes too low, trading is halted for an hour. If it goes really too low, trade is halted for the day. So if it just crashes, if the stock market opens at 9 and by 10 o'clock, it's lost X percentage, trading is halted until tomorrow. And the same is true on the top end. So as we go through these bumpers, these curbs, realize that there's a sweet spot. If you didn't have any curb in the place of the stock market, it would go too crazy. If you had too much of a curb, then there would be no growth in the market at all because it wouldn't allow trading. So finding the sweet spot between, to be perfectly honest, if left to our own devices, Kim and I would just walk around Florence having tea, coffee, lunch,
wine.
We go to Ibiza.
You just basically described our first year here.
Yeah, we would not. So you can't have it too loose, but you also can't have it too tight. So these are the 3 things that currently are working for us. And consider, don't steal them. Just think about what is working, what could work for you and what you need. It's really mostly to have you look at it as a guide for figuring out what your bumpers are.
Well, what I love about these bumpers is I know when you're doing your coaching, you're taking these pieces of our life and you're implementing it and helping your coaching clients with it. Because, for those who don't know, Rob does coaching on next chapter kind of things. But in the next chapter, it's not just business. So you're not just a business coach. Like, I hate the word life coach because I just feel like it's overused, and anyone that actually is a life coach, the majority of them, I'm going to tell you, aren't really life coaches. When you're 21 and you're life coaching, you haven't really lived life yet to be able to coach that shit, but you are. And so a lot of your clients, you have conversations, not just about business, but also about where they are personally, where they are in their relationships, their marriages. And what I like about it is, before we jumped on today, you were like, I actually gave one of my coaching clients one of our bumpers, and I can see how it's impacting her relationship and her overall fulfillment. So I think these do work for us, and they may work for you, or some version may work for you. So let's get into it. All right. Our first one, I feel like I wrote down vibration. Oh, that was a different podcast. Oh my God. The 3 bumpers. Number 1, vibration. Nope. Different podcast. I'm turning red.
Today's sponsor is Jiffy Lube.
Oh, that is so funny. Okay, so that is not, although that could enhance your relationship.
We're supposed to video, our social media manager wants us to video.
Don't you wish you had that one on video?
Well, I wish I had your face on video because you're
purple.
You're purple right now.
Oh my God, that is so funny. Okay, so that wasn't it. Okay.
That's not it.
That's not it. Can you read your handwriting for me? Number 1, what's our first bumper that we have in place?
Take a stab at it. What do you think it says?
No crows allowed.
Oh my God.
Your handwriting is horrible.
No work night.
That says no work night?
Yes.
Okay. No work night. So explain.
All right. So it is very, very easy to allow work creep to filter into your bandwidth. So, for example, I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and we were talking about, checking emails. And he said, like sometimes at night, like while my wife is making dinner, I'll just scan my email. And I am sitting there with her, and I cannot be present with her, not because of the 30 seconds it took me to read the email, but because of me thinking about that 30 seconds of reading the email. So we have at night a very simple thing, and hopefully many of you do too, and that is that we don't work at night. So when we do, the last Zoom or podcast or whatever it is that we're doing, it's over. Everything is closed. Nothing is open. We're not, discussing any of that stuff. And, the bulk of the time, what happens is we sit down and we have dinner as a family. And then Sophia, we give her a few minutes to take a look at, whatever YouTube thing that she wants to watch. She watches YouTube Kids. I ask her, 5 questions about life. We do that every night as a ritual, as a family. And we cover all kinds of different questions from, which kid in your class picks his nose the most to who could fart the loudest. You have to ask them funny questions. Don't ask them, how was your day? That doesn't work. But then after we do that, then we move on to the living room, have a glass of wine, and we have conversation. Now, you may think, okay, what's the big deal? You don't work at night. It's creating the space for us to have a glass of wine and a conversation and to wind down the day with, what did you do today? What did you do today? Oh, tell me about this. Oh, tell me about that. It allows a place on the one hand to do that. And then the mirror of that is in the morning, we have the opposite, which is coffee time together. And that coffee time allows us to have an hour meandering conversation about what would you like to do today? What challenges are you having in growing your podcast, or what challenges you having in, Kim writing a blog, or, me working on an event? It allows us to have that conversation. So we have put two mirror bumpers that, when in place at the end of an evening and the start of the day, always allows a time of check-in in different contexts.
Yeah. So why is this important? How many times have you either said or heard a friend say, we're like two ships sailing in the night and we don't even connect and we have so many things going on? These bumpers are put in place for a reason. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. Number one is what you said about the guy who, while she's cooking and they're talking, he's checking an email. It's not the 30 seconds of the email. It's what it triggers in your bandwidth, in your brain. And so you are done work, but yet you open and you start doing work bandwidth exercises, let's call it. And that's kind of talking about the conversation we had on a few podcasts ago about when is enough, and not letting opportunities or other projects or whatever disrupt your bandwidth for your fulfillment stuff. So when the other things, when work creeps in and starts eating away at family time or eating away at, your workout or whatever it is, that's a problem. We talked about that a few podcasts ago. And so this is a good example of that. And one thing that Rob, and I'll give you this, and some of our friends recently learned this, and I don't think they believe it, to be honest, but Rob used to read to me when I cooked. So I'd be in the kitchen and he would break out a book on Italy. And I'm going back 15 years. I mean, he's done this periodically, only with books about Italy. So it has to be a fun read about Italy. But he would come in the kitchen while I was cooking and read to me about Italy. And it was...
We should reinstitute that.
Well, it's harder now because we live in Italy, and you're doing coaching calls and Zooms and podcasts while I'm cooking in the latter part of the day. So I think that's not a current bumper that we can put in place. It's an old bumper that we used to have. And so if that bumper works for you and it's interesting to you, if you have a joint subject matter or something you want to read together, and it's a good way to do it. And now, granted, we didn't go through books very quickly because it was like one chapter at a time.
But that wasn't the point.
But it wasn't the point. It was the connection and the laughter and the conversation. And I got to tell you, the first book he read to me was called The Reluctant Tuscan. And it was about a guy from LA that moved because his wife was in love with Italy and wanted to come here and sculpt. And they moved to Italy against his will. He was a reluctant Tuscan. And Rob read this book to me, gotta be coming up on 20 years now. And if you don't think that book and the conversations we had about that book and about that idea or the concept of possibly picking up everything and moving to Italy didn't impact where we are literally doing this podcast right now, you're crazy.
It's a really good point.
So the bumpers, in this sense where Rob's talking about, we have this dinner bumper, I feel like we're the Crown. We go into the dinner room and then we go into the sitting room. Like that's kind of, he likes to change locations because it creates a different environment.
It's a different vibe. By the way, just as a side note, if you've watched The Crown before, would you love to have somebody dress you at night?
No, I don't want staff. You have this obsession with staff. I want no one. Do you even understand the life of a mother? I am constantly poked and prodded and tapped, and like I don't want staff, and no one needs to dress me. I can dress myself.
I want somebody to put my pearls on because when you say something,
I could so go so many directions with that.
I want them to put because when you say something, I want to be able to clutch them. I've always wanted to clutch my pearls.
God, you were a duchess in a previous life. Hold on, before you go there. So enough bandwidth. The second thing is you mentioned our morning, right? So this isn't just we sit down for coffee and we look at our calendar to go, what do you got? What do you got? Who's picking up the kids? Like, that's not what we're talking about. We are intentional in our morning. So we have, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 1 hour. It just depends on the morning, but we're intentional about it. A couple of days a week, Rob pulls out our morning questions. By the way, you can get our morning questions. We'll link them in the show notes. Our, 7 or 8 morning questions that we go back and forth and we answer. And we check in with each other. And we've been doing this for almost 2 decades. These questions are so simple, seemingly redundant, and it is how we have managed to check in, make sure we're, sometimes you have something rattling around your brain that's bothering you or that you're confused about or interested in. And these questions sometimes provoke a conversation about it, or they're just questions to check in and move on and start your day in a great mindset.
I just had an aha.
Yeah.
Here's the aha. When you're going to the gym or you're starting a diet, it never works when you just get all radical. It's never long lasting. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to watch everything I eat. I'm going to write it all down. I'm going to, take my pictures. It might work for 10 weeks, but then you default back to something else. What does work is consistency over time. And if you are somebody who has good habits that are projected out over, a couple of times a week, over a year, you make long-lasting changes. So by having these, this first bumper that we talked about, the morning coffee and the evening no work, when you project that out over, and we go out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we sit and watch Netflix. So when you project that out Monday through Thursday over the course of the year, that's a lot of fucking time to know what's going on in your partner's life and know where their challenges are. Because, just like when you listen to a politician and, the politician you'll ask the politician about some particular subject and he'll answer what he wants to talk about. The same thing happens. When something is top of mind in a relationship, you may be talking about the weather, but the other partner is going to bring up the thing that's on her mind or his mind at that time. So it gives the place and the space to allow for that to unfold naturally. All right, number two. Number two is, I can read it completely. I'm hesitating because I don't, so understand what I'm about to say is a principle that works for us. And in no way am I saying this is what you need to do. I want you guys to figure out your bumpers that would work best for you. Like, for example, a bumper to have me go walk through the woods and hunting or whatever people do in the woods would not be a good bumper for me, okay? I have no desire to go do that. All right. So for us, spending a month every year for the last 15 years in the Greek islands, Mykonos has been always the spot. This year it's going to be Paros for a month. That bumper has served for multiple things for us. One is it gives us something to look forward to over the course of the year, and we know that it's coming. Two, it's a bumper that's a family bumper and not just a relationship bumper. And by the way, if you want to have a good relationship, you better have a good relationship with your kids too, if you want to have one with your wife. Having a bad relationship with your kids does not equal a good relationship with your wife.
What did they say? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and the way to a woman's heart is going to be through her kids.
Probably, right? Probably.
Because if that's not good, no one's happy.
Nobody's going to be happy. So that time has allowed for all of us to wake up in the morning and go to the beach and have lazy lunches. And is there a cost for it? Sure, there's a cost because, we got to figure out how do we sneak work in while we're doing that. But the point is that we reverse it. Instead of the bulk of the day being work and then some downtime with morning coffee and evening, no work. Now it's mostly not work and sneaking in a little bit of work there. But the point is that bumper has served our family in really big ways, I'd say for the last, 15 years.
Yeah. And so we take a month. We did not start with a month. In fact, we did our first month when Sophia was maybe 2 or 3 years old. And I only know that because we actually did a video series called 30 Days Away. And it was the first time we were ever doing that. So it hasn't been 15 years of a month. We literally started with 1 week. And then the following year, we pushed to 2 weeks. How did we push to 2 weeks? We figured it out. We saved financially. We allocated. We stopped spending here to save here, or we created another lane of income to fund it. But we prioritized that vacation time together because like Rob said, the majority of our time when we're on a vacation is not spent working. Now, if we only did 1 week, we would shut down completely. We used to go to Greece and shove our phones in the safe, and we didn't even look at them. We would shut down completely for 1 week, 2 weeks. For us in the lane we're in now, where it was easier then because you were a chiropractor and we could easier turn everything off. Now we have different things that are pulling at us, podcast, coaching clients, community, and stuff like that. And although we lessen it during this 1 month period, it can't completely go away, but we try to prioritize the family over it. And we prioritize doing things together as a family for that month and not like sending Sophia to camp, because although we will do that in the future, she's still really young and we want that bonding time, and we've had that. So how can this apply for you? We have friends that do a once a month weekend getaway. So maybe you can't do a month over the summer, but maybe you can do a 3-day weekend once a month and go somewhere. Maybe you want to go to the woods. Maybe you want to go to a lake. Maybe you want to go camping. Maybe you want to go to a spa. Maybe whatever it is, go on a road trip, whatever your thing is, putting the bumper in and saying, we are going to do this as a family. We are prioritizing family time over work for this period of time. And we are going all in on that. And so that bumper for us has served our family. And again, by the way, when you take that downtime, it doesn't just recharge your family and rebond your family. It recharges you in a way. Like if you truly, truly take that downtime and you allow yourself to get re-inspired, you go to a new place, you can't help but tap into a more creative part of you. And that's like Rob, where you create all of these experiences like our Italy experience coming up in the fall, or your platinum experiences and all of that. Like that's, even though we're talking about relationship and family right now, when couples come on our events, you unplug them from work and you put them into experiences, and they are able to, connect deeper, get re-inspired and recharge.
Yeah, like for example, we've got one that's coming up in the summer, and we will be going to the south of France. And so if this is something that you're interested in, we'll link it up in the show notes. But this bumper that we have put in place with Greece, you just made me think of something. And that is that beyond the family, beyond connecting with you and connecting with Sophia on these trips, what it allows me is to have a bumper in place for creativity. So for example, I'll wake up in the morning and I'm looking at the ocean, the sun. And when you're in that state and you're not in your normal routine, you start thinking of things and you get an idea. You're like, oh, you know what? I would love to do one of our platinum trips in Greece. Or, you know what? I just had this idea. What if I took the group down to watch a sunset in the, whatever. You just get inspiration because you have set, like if you look at, if you were to graph the month we have off, the first couple of days, it would be this, like we're still kind of working because we're in that mode. And then the environment would slowly have us working a little bit less. And then by the time we're 2 weeks in, we're already Greek. Kim looks like she's 9 shades darker. Do you know what I mean? I got white cream all over every white part of my body that's trying not to burn, but I'm in it, and we're eating octopus and we're like lost.
16-year-old boy. Sorry. Go ahead. Just ignore me and go.
What was the name of that James Bond movie? The character.
I can't.
Well, no, what was it? I can't quite remember.
It
was
neither.
Octa.
Uh-huh.
It was Octa what?
Uh-huh.
It was Octa.
What is this? The Day Kim Turns Red show?
Yeah.
Okay. So to get to the, here's the thing I think that we're actually uncovering as we're talking about this. The 1 month that we take, or the 1 week or 2 weeks, or maybe you take 3 months. Hell, I don't know what your schedule is. We travel though. And I think part of the thing with this bumper is changing your location. Like, I don't think taking a week off or even a month off and like staying home qualifies. I think you need to change your location, because when you change your location, it sometimes changes the language, changes the food, changes the scenery, changes the inspiration, it changes you. Like, I remember you said, Rob, growing up, you had a rougher childhood in New York, but whenever you guys went to Jamaica, your dad was a different guy.
He was.
And I think that is because there's a location change and there's a lack of work.
Sure.
And there's a different side of you that can come out. Like, Stella got her groove back for a reason on vacation,
Ironically, it's funny.
It's also Jamaica.
It's also Jamaica.
Yeah, so go to Jamaica. It's, I think that the travel and the change. So I'm going to modify this second bumper to don't just take a month off in the summer. Take time off to travel and change your location. And like I said, it could be going camping, but you're changing your location. And that change will affect your family. It's like a ripple effect that will keep going.
A good metaphor for you is to look at a pinball machine and look at all the bumpers inside the pinball machine. Those bumpers allow the ball to bounce around things. So what you're doing is you're putting in place big rocks that are important so your life can navigate around it. The last one is what we are doing right now on this day in time. The name of this show, what we're about to do is...
Just kidding. I was going back to what you were asking me.
You know what would have been so great? If you said the whole thing, I would have the editor edit the octa.
I know, and you would move it.
And I would just have him, I would have him loop the second part of that with you just screaming it in a loop.
No, absolutely not.
Put some music behind it.
Never going to happen. What we're going to do today is Fri-Date. And so what this bumper is for us, a lot of people go do date night, right? And no knock to date night. I think date night is great. It's a good bumper. It's a good thing. I think sometimes date night feels, what's the word? Obligatory? I don't know. Like, it feels like we're going to go and we've worked all day because it's going to be during the week because the kid, you want to go out with the kid on the weekend or whatever, or you've worked all day, you've had a long day, and you go out to a restaurant and you talk over food and you probably talk about the kids because you haven't put in the other bumpers yet. So you're catching up for the week and you're going through what needs to be done. And it's not really a date. And that's how we found it for us. So although it is time that you are setting aside, I think there's a lot of people, raise your hand if this has ever happened. You go on date night and you get in a fight with your spouse because you haven't really talked about all the shit that is boiling up. And then you have this obligatory date night. And then all of a sudden you get a couple of glasses of wine in you and you can divulge that you're pissed. Like, it doesn't exactly go the way you thought it would. And I'm not saying every date night is like that, but I feel like date night is not as intentional as it could be. And so what we started to do is Fri-Date, date day. And date day doesn't need to be on a Friday. It can be whatever you want. It can be 2 hours of your time. It doesn't need to be a whole day. Going out during the day and doing an activity, whether you go bike riding together, maybe you go on a hike, maybe you take a cooking class, like doing something unique and different. It doesn't have to cost money. You can have a picnic, whatever it is, but doing something unique and different during the day and spending time together, a couple of hours, and having lunch. So it's not dinner. You're not exhausted. Your brain is a little clearer. And I feel like you just get more bang for your buck on a date day than you ever would for a date night. And I don't know, that's where we are in our current thing is I feel like I go to dinner. I feel like I have dinner out and it doesn't feel like a date anymore. It feels like a dinner where we actually can have a conversation without a third voice. And that's kind of the extent of it. But when you and I go to a museum, or we take a cooking class, or we go on a bike ride in Chianti, or whatever we do, that feels like a date to me. It feels like early relationship stuff, and especially if, like, we have friends that alternate designing the date day, which we should probably put into place, because we always get to date day and go, what do you want to do? And thank God we live in Florence and we can just pop into something. But I think my friends that take turns alternating what they do, or, designing a date, there's like intention around that. And it's, today I thought we'd go hiking and go see a waterfall or whatever. I don't know. Does that make sense? Am I rambling?
You are rambling, but you're rambling in a good way, because you're like, you had me at hello there. Like, this is a really interesting concept, because, all dates are not created equal. And there is a bit of an obligatory thing when it comes to date night. It seems like the whole world is doing it, certainly better than not doing it. But the intention behind it is quite different when you spend time. Like, one of my coaching clients now, she doesn't have the ability to do it on Fridays because of work. So she implemented it 2 weeks ago. And I did a coaching call with her yesterday, and it was her second week of her Monday date lunch. And there's some challenges with scheduling, because she's recently had a child. And so she's doing the date day. They're alternating it. 1 week they're doing it at home. One of them is cooking, and the other one is surprising them with it. And then the following week, they were able to get somebody to watch the kid for those few hours, and they're going out. In either case, they're doing something. They have a big property, so they're outdoorsy and they love going out. In either case, there's an activity involved. They'll either go hiking, or they'll do some gardening on those days, or they'll go out and do a date day in and around the area, like a museum or something like that. And there is something very different, I think, to both of those. So, whether, you implement morning coffee, evening no work, a month off for creativity, connection with the family, or a date day, doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you don't do any of those. What does matter is that you figure out what your needs are for your spouse, your children, and for yourself, and put in regular bumpers, guardrails, protection that will allow you to have a release valve throughout any given week to service those important areas.
I think you said it. I literally have nothing to add to that. I'm sorry. I was just lost in the conversation.
That's it, everybody. Go get your bumper on and have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Become part of our inner circle and unlock uncensored, deeper, more personal content that will help you design your dream life and effortlessly navigate obstacles alongside your partner.
Click the Patreon link for instant access to our premium community and get exclusive content, monthly live workshops, and a bunch of other freebies.